How a poor Japanese boy created Honda. In 1922, a 15-year-old boy shows up for his first day at work at a small auto repair shop in Tokyo, Japan. The owner, who questioned if the boy was even meant for this type of business, assigned him to clean the workshop and look after his child instead. At the time, nobody thought much of it, neither did they care, but only because they had no idea who this kid would eventually become. Fast forward a few decades and that boy Soichiro Honda was now competing with some of the biggest car brands in the world, while also owning the largest motorbike manufacturer. This is the story of how one poor Japanese boy who went from babysitting children to building the multi-billion-dollar brand with Honda Motors. In 1906, in a small poverty-ridden village called Tenryushizuka at the foot of Mount Fuji, it was there that Gaya Honda and his wife welcomed their first son Soichiro Honda. Soichiro's father was a local blacksmith from the village who also fixed bicycles on the side, while his mother was an accomplished weaver. Soichiro lost 5 of his siblings growing up due to health issues. When Soichiro was 8 years old, he was going about his normal routine in the neighborhood when he heard a strange rumble that grabbed his attention. He followed the sound until he came across a big piece of strange machinery rolling along on 4 wheels. This machine was a Ford Model T, and Soichiro was left captivated by what he had just witnessed. This experience left a mark in his life that would forever change the way he would engage with machines. He learned how to wet the blades of the farm machinery and repair bicycles. He was fascinated by all kinds of engines and motors, but Soichiro hated the idea of going to school, and instead of pursuing a proper education, he spent the majority of his childhood helping his father with his bicycle repair business. His lack of interest in school affected his grades so terribly that he used some rubber that he found to forge his family's stamp on his grade reports. In 1922, Soichiro came across a magazine ad for a Tokyo-based automobile servicing company called Art Shokai. He reasoned that since the company was one of the most popular motor car services in the city, they might be in need of new workers. So he wrote a letter to Art Shokai inquiring about a job, and luckily enough he received a positive reply. So at the age of 15, Soichiro dropped out of school, left home and headed for Tokyo in pursuit of his dreams. From when Soichiro arrived, the shop's owner Yuzo Sakakibara had a job already prepared for him. He was to babysit the owner's child. Over the next few months he wasn't making any money, and the only work tasks he was assigned was to carry a baby wrapped around on his back. As time went by, the owner couldn't keep up with the high demand of his automobile business, so he finally pulled Soichiro in to help him out. Even though Soichiro started out doing menial tasks, he gradually climbed his way up until he became a trusted mechanic at the company. Through his work, Soichiro quickly became familiar with a wide range of automobiles, including Lincolns, Mercedes, Daimlers, and even various motorcycles that were brought into the workshop. Soichiro poured everything he had into expanding his knowledge and understanding of his craft. In 1923, Sakakibara himself began to build racing cars with the help of his workers, including Soichiro. Their first model was the Art Daimler, built using a second-hand Daimler engine, and their second model was the Curtiss. In 1926, Soichiro was drafted for military service, but didn't pass the medical exams as they revealed that he was colorblind. At the age of 21, Soichiro was called upon to run the new branch. However, Soichiro's repair shop struggled during the first year, largely because people didn't want to entrust their cars with someone so new and so young. By the 1930s, his new shop had grown from a one-man operation to a staff of 30 people. Even though Soichiro was known as a brilliant mechanic, he was also a prodigious racing driver, and this was another skill that helped him stand out from his peers. In June 1936, Honda was involved in a serious crash while racing the Hamamatsu in the suburbs of Tokyo and almost passed away. Soichiro's left arm was fractured, his shoulder was dislocated, and his face was damaged. By 1936, Honda became tired and weary of his repair work. He wanted to do more and was planning to move on to manufacturing car parts. He proposed turning the Shokai Hamamatsu branch into a separate company for this purpose. But the shareholders of the company disagreed with him. The investors saw that the current orders and workload from the repair shop were bringing in enough profit and they didn't want to take a gamble on a venture. So Soichiro decided to open his own company to manufacture piston rings and founded the Tokai Seiki Heavy Industry and made one of his close friends, Shigeru Kato, the president of his company. During the next couple of years, Soichiro had worked so much that he lost a lot of weight, causing his face to look emaciated. And after a series of failures, Soichiro decided to enroll as a part-time student at the Hamamatsu Industrial Institute to improve his knowledge of metallurgy. It wasn't until 1939, when Soichiro would finally create a successful working piston. Honda began producing pistons day in and day out, but his creations were still flawed and nowhere near the quality they needed to be. Toyota contacted Soichiro to make pistons for the company, and out of the 50, he submitted only 3 past Toyota's standard. It was a big setback for Soichiro, but he didn't give up. He spent the next few years traveling around Japan visiting steel-making companies and universities to improve his knowledge. Soichiro gave it another try. The result was incredible. Not only did his new pistons pass quality control, but orders also began to come in from all over the country. In 1946, Soichiro used his old warehouse to establish the Honda Technical Research Institute for the sole purpose of figuring out a way to make motorbikes. There he and a staff of 12 men followed through with his idea and successfully managed to put together a motorbike using some engines he found along with other spare parts. Soon enough, Soichiro was running out of used engines, so he decided to design and develop one of his own. Soichiro founded the Honda Motor Company in 1948 with the initial goal of building motorcycles to help get Japanese workers around. The only problem was Soichiro needed more money to expand his production, so he wrote an open letter to all 18,000 bicycle shop owners in Japan telling them that he had thought of a solution to get Japan moving again. He succeeded in building another motorcycle and named it the Super Cub. It was an instant hit and became so successful that it won the Emperor's Prize. Honda also joined efforts with investor Takeo Fujisawa, who provided the capital he needed as well. By the 1960s, Honda had become the biggest motorcycle company in the world. After the release of the Honda Dream in 1949, they had produced a total of 10 million motorcycles, by 1968 however becoming the biggest motorcycle company. Honda debuted its first automobile in 1963 with the release of the T360 mini truck, a small but reliable pickup truck. Unfortunately, the mini-truck never gained much traction, and it was soon followed with the company's first ever sports car, the S500. This S500 was a 2-door roadster with a 4-speed transmission capable of reaching 80 miles per hour. It was a smaller car, but it was smooth and easy to drive, but sadly only around 1,300 cars of this model were built, making it one of the rarest Honda cars ever made. But just like Soichiro did with his motorcycles, Honda brought its cars into the racing world. The Honda RA271 made its Formula One debut at the 1964 Belgian Grand Prix. It only took 1 year for Honda to achieve a first-place victory at the 1965 Mexican Grand Prix. After taking a break from racing, and they turned their attention to building one of the most successful cars in the automobile market, the Honda Civic. Honda debuted their new model in 1972, and in the following years, it became one of the most popular cars in the world. The Honda Accord would later become one of the best-selling sedans in the automotive history. At the beginning of the 80s, the Honda Motor Company was the 3rd largest producer of cars in Japan, and by the end of the decade it was the 3rd biggest car company on the planet.